Hey everyone! This video is sort of a part 2 to the last video. We're gonna take what we did with the sword and enemy knockback and make it actually feel good this time by increasing knockback, having the player and the enemies change colors, and the enemies will explode when they're hit twice, so enemy death animations. Please check out my Discord in the description. It's growing very nicely and is the quickest way to reach me. Also check out my Patreon in the description. I'll have a little bit more information on that at the end of the video. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is make some small edits to code from earlier episodes. Let's go to our knockback code, and we're just going to change the speed times 1.5 and just make it 125. This way it's uniform for all entities and it doesn't depend on how fast they move. Sorry for not doing that in the first place, but yeah, eventually we can have each weapon or enemy have a different value here, but we'll get to that if we need to. Now we want to update the sword and player swing state. So right now the player, if something hits it while he has his sword out, he won't move at all. I don't want that, so we're just going to add movement loop here, and we're going to keep its move to dir.center. If you remember, we made that script that has all of the directions, so it's just setting its move direction to vector 2, 0, 0. Okay, so now the player can't move while attacking, but the enemies should be able to knock him back. So if we check this out, as you could see, the enemies take more knockback, and if I'm swinging the sword, it's kind of hard to show, but if I'm swinging the sword and I get hit, I actually get pushed back. So now what I want to do is make it so the entities change colors when they are hit. So in the description I'll have links to all these files, but I have Stalfo's hurt and player hurt. It's just little recolors. And also there's enemy death.png. We'll get to that later, but just put the Stalfo's hurt and enemy death into the enemies folder and the player hurt into the player folder. So go to the entity, and we need two more variables. One called texture default, which will equal null, and texture hurt, which will also be null. Now we're going to have a ready function, and texture default is just going to be the entity's current texture, and texture hurt, this one's a little long, so we're going to load sprite texture get path. So we're going to their current texture, which in Stalfo's case is going to be stalfos.png, so it's going to get the path to here, and then we're going to replace the .png with hurt.png. So we're kind of just appending hurt to it. So it's going to take the same file name as we set when we added it to the sprite, but we're also going to use the hurt one. Why is this red? Oh, my bad. Function. Okay. So that's all for that. Now we're going to update our damage loop. So, one second. Sorry about that. So we're just going to go to our damage loop, and we need the entities to switch their textures if they're in hit stun. So here, we're going to take the sprite set the texture to texture hurt when it is in hit stun. And then we're going to say else it's texture default. And let's test this out. So the player changes colors, and the enemies, if I get hit one, also changes colors. Cool. So now we want to add health to the enemy. So create a new constant up here, call it max health, and we're going to set it to 2. This means the enemy will take 2, by default every entity will take 2 sword hits, and then we're going to have health, and by default it will be the max health. Okay, now go back down to damage loop, and we're going to add 1 line of code here, health minus equals body get damage. So we already made that when we were creating the sword and the entities. So here, oh here, in the Stalfos. So now we need them to die if their health goes below 0. So we're gonna do it only when it's out of hit stun. We don't want it to be during hit stun because we want the enemies to finish their hit stun knockback animation kind of thing, and then die. So it's only going to be for enemies because we'll do player game over stuff later. So if the type is enemy and health is less than or equal to 0, queue free. And let's run the game again. They should take 2 hits. Yep, and they're disappearing. Cool. Now, last little part of the video, we want to add enemy death animations. So this is going to need a new scene, and it's going to have a root node called enemy_death. Save it into the enemies folder. It's going to have an animation player, which I always shorten to anim, and a sprite. The sprite is going to be this enemy death sprite sheet that we had earlier, and it's going to have 8 H-frames. So let's create a new animation called default, and this is just going to be every single frame of the sprites. So there we go. And yeah, now we need a new script. Create. Don't need any of this. So we're going to have it play the animation right off the bat, and then we want to connect the signal animation finished from the animation node to ourselves to a function called destroy. This is just like we did for the sword. Destroy animation queue free. So if we press F6 to run just this scene, we'll see in the corner. Yeah, just does that. So now we want the enemies to create this when they die. So let's go back to our entity. And here we're going to create a new variable called death animation, or whatever you want, and that's going to be preload the enemy death and a new instance of that. Now we want to add the child to the parent of the enemy, so that should be the root node. And we want to set its position to the entity's position. So that should work. Yep. And they blow up into a puff of smoke. Alright, that's all I've got. I'm not sure what the next video is going to be on yet. The next big things on our plate are screen transitions, and I believe I said in an update video before, I'm not entirely sure how I want to do screen transitions. The way I've always had it working, we're just you walk to the edge and it instantly transitions, but I kind of want it to, stop you and then you walk forward a little bit and then it's an actual screen transition, you see it slide. I gotta figure out how I want to do that. We need a HUD to show your equipped items and your health. We need sound effects, and we need a better way of placing enemies in the map, so an enemy tile set. We could also work on an actual tile set to pretty things up from the green blocks we have right now. Could be any of those. I might keep it simple and do like a new item or an enemy. I said in an update video that I just want a few different items and a few different enemies that act a little differently, so you kind of have the idea of how to make your own enemy types. Same with items. I think I'm going to do a sword, a boomerang, and a bow, and maybe like simple bombs. Yeah, so Patreon. If any of you are feeling generous, please check out my Patreon. The tier rewards and goals are gonna change, but for now it is $1 patrons will be listed at the end of every video. $5 patrons will gain access to episode scripts to follow along with the videos, and $10 patrons will get a call out at the end of the first video uploaded after they pledge, and they'll gain access to project files. I have project files for every single video so far. I've saved them, but I'll add comments, clean them up, make them nice and pretty for $10 patrons. And $5 patrons soon will get rough drafts of written versions of the tutorials. I know not everyone likes video tutorials. I usually don't watch them that often, but rough drafts, they're going to be polished up and released to the public later. Like I said, tier rewards are changing. I really enjoy making these videos, and if you pledge on Patreon, they will increase in quality and quantity. So please do so. I'll have more information in coming videos. I just put it up a few weeks ago. But anyway, yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.